What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. So today I want to discuss starter decks. Now, every time around this year, usually towards the end of July to the beginning of August, we receive a brand new structure deck, which is meant to act as an introductory product for new players or maybe beginner players to start getting their feet wet and jumping headfirst into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! But as time has gone on, I've noticed that these starter decks have actually kind of lost their purpose in terms of what they're fundamentally trying to do in terms of getting people hooked on Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, and that's what I wanted to discuss today. But before we get into that, I want to give a huge shout out to my newest patrons, as always. So big shout outs today to Cimoooooooo Signs Them Cards, man, great name, as well as Pierre. You guys are the reason that this channel is growing strong. And if you guys want to help support me in the channel through Patreon, then check out the Patreon link in the description below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So Starter Deck Codebreaker is the starter deck that actually is released today, as a matter of fact. And one of the biggest things that I really like about this, and I think a lot of people are looking forward to, is the fact that Link Kuriboh is in this starter deck. Now, this is huge for a couple of reasons. First off, Link Kuriboh was a Shonen Jump promo card, so if you didn't have a subscription to the Shonen Jump at the time to get your Link Kuriboh, you're gonna have to pay $30 to $35 to get your copy, which actually was very crucial for a lot of different decks, both casually and competitively, if they wanted to perform at a higher level. The other thing is that because it was a Shonen Jump promo, it was only available in North American territories, meaning that everywhere else where the TCG is legal, Link Kuriboh was not. But now that Codebreaker is being printed and it is going to be available in all TCG regions, that means that Link Kuriboh is finally going to be legal in Central America, in South America, in Europe. Everywhere around the world is finally going to have Link Kuriboh. And I think this is a really good thing because they could have easily put this in like a booster set just as a secret rare or something, or what they typically do is they put it in a special edition where you're not guaranteed to get the card, so you have a 50-50 shot, but I guess the upside is you're not paying a set cost, and you have the potential to actually make some money since special editions contain booster packs, which can have anywhere, you know, from $50 to $80 money cards in some instances, so I guess that's your trade-off. But I would rather have it be universally applied to all territories, that they all have access to a card like this, especially a card that's so generic and so crucial for the game. But this leads us on to my next point, because when I was looking at the spoiler for Codebreaker, it almost felt like really reminiscent of something else I had seen before. So I'm going to show you guys the backs of the Link Strike starter deck, the starter deck from last year, and the Codebreaker starter deck. Now, if you guys see this, what looks familiar here? I mean, you could see a couple of similarities. You might see some cards that might cross over between both of those starter decks. But what if I told you that there are 25 cards that are duplicates between the Link Strike starter deck and the Codebreaker starter deck? 25 different cards. I actually put this in an Excel spreadsheet because I thought I was seeing things, and yeah, over half of the deck is the same cards that were printed in last year's starter deck. That's absolutely fucking ridiculous. Like, I can't even believe that they actually just printed the exact same cards. Like, that's just pure laziness. There's no need to print cards like Evil Swarm Mandragora and Marshmallow and United We Stand again. There's already like 10 to 15 printings of probably each one of those cards. I can understand reprinting cards like Mystical Space Typhoon, Dark Hole, Mirror Force, Torrential Tribute. These are good staple cards that pretty much every deck can use, and you also see them in the competitive formats from time to time. So cards like that, you know, I'm okay with those getting reprints, but not cards that are just completely worthless depending on the type of deck you're trying to play. Now, I understand that starter decks are meant to be an introductory product, and the effects are meant to be rather basic in general, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is arguably one of, if not the most complex card game to learn or to teach someone, so by having simple card effects, I think that's a good way to kind of get people started off. However, the issue I have with this is that this deck just kind of looks like a 2005 GOAT control deck with Link monsters. You know, these cards have basically zero synergy with one another. You've got stuff like Exarion Universe, like, it's just a bunch of like semi-decent generic cards thrown together, and that's kind of how you used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Back when the game first came out. But newsflash, it's 2018, and I feel that this doesn't exactly do justice for how you would actually be playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In the current time, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a very archetype-focused game where decks are defined by their archetype. Think about the best decks in the current competitive format. What are the names of these decks? Goki, Trickstar, Sky Striker, Burning Abyss, Pendulum Magician. These decks are literally defined by the archetypes that encapsulate them. And obviously sometimes you have two archetypes that meld together and make a deck, but then what do you call it? Sky Striker, Trickstar, both namesakes just put into the same title. This isn't like hand control or mill or other ways you would title or basically just associate decks like back in 2005, 2006. And that's how you see how Yu-Gi-Oh! Has shifted in a completely different direction since that time. And so I feel that people are really getting robbed of the true Yu-Gi-Oh! Experience by having these decks, because this is pretty much not the time to play, Summon Xarian Universe Set 2 Pass. We're way beyond that. Decks have so much more potential, especially higher up the competitive ladder that you go. But even at a very basic casual level, these decks can do so much more than something like a starter deck. So what's the solution? How do you have a deck that's essentially an archetype, but also is simple enough that people can learn and begin to understand for themselves? Well, let me introduce you to the hypothetical Satellar Knight starter deck. Now, Satellar Knights haven't exactly been competitively relevant for the past 4 years or so this is a great opportunity to teach someone how to play the game, because Satellar Knights were actually a tier 1 to tier 2 deck, and by reprinting all of these cards, they have some of the most basic effects in the game, but they actually work very well together. You start to see the synergy between the cards. You've got a card like Deneb, which searches any Satellar Knight monster from deck to hand. You've got Vega, special summoning one from your hand. You've got Altair, special summoning Satellar Knights from the graveyard. Unuklahai to dump them to the graveyard, and I guess you can even throw Alsam in there just to inflict 1,000 damage. And the thing about this is, it kind of shows how engines within archetypes work, because one of the most popular plays with a deck like this is to go something like Vega into Altair to resurrect Deneb, and then you search another Satellar Knight off of that. And by doing so, you now have assembled 3 monsters on your field, which you can use to maybe go into a rank 4 Xyz summon, which there are a plethora of rank 4s they could easily put into a product like this that aren't exactly, game breaking or like completely meta breaking. Or you have 3 monsters to go ahead and make a Decode Talker, which Decode Talker happens to be, the main protagonist's card. So there's actually a lot of value there if you're trying to push the Link summoning mechanic, rather than having to play some really janky cards like you might see in the current starter decks. But then it's cool because you start to understand as a new player how engines within archetypes work, because let's say you bought 3 of these starter decks, which means you now have 3 copies of every single Satellar Knight. Well, on your follow-up play, Deneb may have searched like another Altair or something like that, so then you have your Decode Talker. You can do the exact same play. You can go Vega into Altair into Deneb. Deneb will search something out, but now you have 3 more monsters to do something with, whether you're going to go into a Deltaros to pop your opponent's cards, but you have Decode's Link arrows basically teaching you how to just further your board state and really just help develop a very strong board, and that's how you're going to win games. Satellar Knights are simple enough, and this isn't just the only archetype. There's plenty of other archetypes that could fill this role as well, but they're simple enough to really teach people the fundamental mechanics of normal summoning, special summoning, searching, but then also going into more advanced things like, if you have Call of the Haunted included in this deck, you can do stuff like Trevere bouncing the Call of the Haunted back so that you could reset it on the following turn. So it teaches beginner stuff, but also puts players on a course to teach them more intermediate and advanced skills. And I think this is something that would be very vital in teaching new people how to play the game, but also for getting people really hooked on it, because people have fun when their deck can do so many different crazy things. And as excited as we all might get about Summon Xarian Set 2 Pass, I think it's a lot more exciting when your deck can summon 3 monsters out with ease, and you basically can tutor anything in your extra deck, given whatever the extra deck for a starter deck like this would provide. People like options and in being able to play the game how they want to. And I think this would be such a boon if Konami would take note of this and maybe start to redefine how these starter decks should not only introduce players to the game, but also teach them not only basic mechanics, but more skills that they're going to use the better they get at the game. Now, I understand that this is meant to be an introductory product. I understand that, it's supposed to be in the Cyverse world because we're pushing the current anime, so there's a lot of stipulations there, but that doesn't mean something like this is impossible. If we're looking at the long-term longevity of the game, since Yu-Gi-Oh! Can be such a complicated game for new players to learn, I think something like this would be so crucial and beneficial to the community that you can say, hey, you want to learn how to play Yu-Gi-Oh? Here's a deck, here's what you need to do, and basically teach them some of these basic simple combos, maybe to players like us, but to them it might just be absolutely mind-blowing, and it's more exciting than just having a couple cards and only being able to play like one monster per turn. I think that's very beneficial, and they can still have stuff like Link Kuriboh in these decks to kind of give you a selling point on why not only just new players, but even veteran players alike might want to purchase this product. But I really feel that the current starter decks are robbing players of this experience because they don't really do enough to teach them and give them that true Yu-Gi-Oh! Experience we've all come to know and love. But guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about the current starter decks. Do you think they could be improved, or do you think they do a good enough job as is? I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. And if you found this video informative, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.